How can HR work in an agile manner? And what is the difference between traditional HR and agile HR? That's the focus of today's guest talk. I welcome back the fabulous Frida Mangen. Frida's passion revolves around HR, agile, and driving positive change in organizations. And she's the host of the great Swedish The Agile HR Pod. This is the second of two talks. In the first talk, link below, Frida focused on how HR can support an agile transformation. In this talk, Frida explores how HR can apply agile to their own ways of working. And you know what? I've learned that roughly 85% of you watching now aren't subscribing. Click that subscribe button so you don't miss any future great episodes. Enough talk. Frida, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Yury. It's a pleasure to be here again. So let's dig into and look at what role HR plays in an organization that starts work agile. So let's start with a short recap on the history and background from my last session on HR for Agile. So I was talking about the importance about start to ask ourselves, why Agile? Far too often I see companies start working Agile without really considering why. Agile has become like a buzzword or a magic pill, something that should solve all the world's problem. I'm sorry to say, but that's just an illusion. So I think it's important to start to consider what effect we are aiming for. And then we can start to embrace the mindset because Agile is all about the mindset with a toolbox, with a lot of different working methods, principles, etc. So once we know what effect we want to achieve, we can start to testing, experimenting, and learn to try to reach that effect. So Agile is not the goal itself, but Agile is an enabler. What I often see is that Agile has moved from being something that the IT department is doing to include the entire organization. Why? Because we're living in a fast changing and complex environment. Our organizations need to listen to the end user and adapt to them, the changes in the market and the environment. And so we need to learn to adapt and also to survive as organizations. So I would say that we are in the middle of a paradigm shift, and all parts of the organization need to modernize, innovate, and focus on delivering value and adapt to this to keep this pace. So what I often see is a clash between the old way of working and the new way of working. The world around us is changing faster than our brains and our organizations. And many experience naturally that we are losing the control. And we try to get grip of the situation, and often we do it by adding more control, like regulations, policies, rules, governing documents, etc. And this is what we call the strategic gap or slip. We are getting even further away from their reality, and our organizations are turning into turtles. We become slow, and it's hard to catch opportunities and change directions. And new players enter the market and become leopards. They're running ahead of us and maybe in a totally different angle. This also happens internally. When some parts of the organization starts to work agile and others don't, it becomes a clash between the leopards and the turtles. And HR play an important role here. Our processes and working methods fundamentally affect the culture, how we work, and what we value. The static HR processes build on best practices such as the annual HR year, performance appraisal, job description, etc., often fail to meet this need of fluent and rapidly change. So we either become a bottleneck or an enabler in order to reach business agility. So therefore, we at HR need to catch up and understand what agility is all about, and also how we can contribute and help the organization in order to transform. So Agile HR can be divided into two parts. Agile for HR, that is how we start to explore Agile within the HR department, the how. HR for Agile is how we support an organization that starts to work Agile, the what. In this session, I will focus on Agile for HR. We will look into how we can design modern workplaces by combining our previous know-how on organizational development law and regulation with the agile way of working and thinking. I believe it's essential to embrace the mindset. The mindset will help us navigate when we are solving, developing, and supporting the organization with HR-related tasks. There are 4 pillars in the Agile mindset and also 4 crucial questions to ask ourselves while we're working. The first one is about psychological safety. We at HR need to start with ourselves. Do we experience psychological safety in our team? Do we feel that we can be ourselves, admitting mistakes, and come with ideas without fear of negative consequences? By starting with ourselves, we can also influence and affect others. So in all work we do, I think we should ask ourselves, how does this contribute to the psychological safety? The second one is value-adding activities. We at HR are often very good at people and relationships, but we end up in a policy and documentation trap. So we become a service function for everyone else in the organization to handle the bureaucracy. So in all work we do, I think we should ask ourselves, but also our employees, in what way does this contribute with value to the organization? The third one is about the purpose. It's important for an organization that everyone understands its purpose, what and why. Otherwise, we can't create the greatest possible value for our customer and our end users. I believe that a clear purpose establishes community, commitment, and also meaningfulness. So in all work we do, I think we should ask ourselves, what outcome are we aiming for? And is it clear to everyone? The fourth one is about probe, sense, and respond. Complex problems do not have simple solutions. They often need to grow through an experimental working method with reflection and interaction with others. So in all work we do, I think we should ask ourselves, what type of problem am I solving, and what effect do I want to achieve, and what hypothesis do I have to get there? Far too often I see that we start to solve problem without thinking about what type of problem it is and in which context we are operating in. I believe in taking one step back and considering this before we jump into the solution. The Knevin framework developed by Dave Snowden can help us to sort this out. Knevin is a problem-solving framework that helps us to put situation into 4 domains defined by the cause and effect relationship. The first one is about obvious context. In obvious context and with obvious problem, the cause and effect are clear to everyone. Here we can easily base our responses on best practices. The second one is complicated context. Here, there is a relationship between the cause and effect, but it can be complicated to see it. So here we need to sense, analyze, and then we can respond and decide upon best practice or good practice. They can help and guide us here. We within HR are used to solving problems in this way. But nowadays, context and problems start to become more complex because we are in constant movement. So the best approach here is to probe, then sense and respond. So rather than trying to control the situation, we need to be patient and work in smaller iteration and let the solution emerge. The last one is the chaotic situation. There is no relation between cause and effect here, so the primary goal is to establish order and stability. Crisis and emergency scenarios often fall into this domain. Usually, problem on the right side, obvious and complicated, can be inspired by the lean thinking and working, and problem on the left side of the Knevin framework of the agile way of working. Still, it's beneficial to embrace the agile mindset regardless type of problem. Usually, transactional HR fall into the right side, for example, salary administration, and development-related HR on the left side, for example, when we're developing leadership program or an activity-based office. So how do we tackle these complex problems, problems on the left side of the Knevin framework? Here we need to move away from the waterfall project and these big bang delivers. When we are on the left side, it's beneficial to think and act more like a scientist. I recommend to co-create and invite people from the organization to collect feedback on the topic. And then we can make our assumption, we can build our hypotheses and start to prototype and test them. And we want to do this in smaller iteration where we deliver value in smaller chunks and let the product evolve. Often we call these small delivers for MVPs, minimum viable product. And I will give you an example with an illustration made by Henrik Nyberg. In this case, the customer wants a car. So instead of deliver a big bang deliver to the customer, and the customer needs to wait several months, we will provide the car in smaller chunks and continuously add value, and then we collect feedback during the process. So in the first iteration, we build a skateboard. We collect and listen to feedback. The customer, she's happy with the first MVP, but she thinks it's a bit unstable. So in the next iteration, we add a handle. So in the end of the next iteration, we talk with our customer, and she's still happy, but she would prefer to go a bit faster. So in the next iteration, we'll build a bike, and then we continue like this. And in the end, it turns out that the customer, she liked wind in her hair. So the end product become a cab. Often the customer doesn't know exactly what they want. So by working together and evolve the product continuously, we reduce the risk of delivering products that the market doesn't inquire for. So, how do we do if the problem are complicated or obvious? How do we tackle this problem? Regardless type of problem, left or right side of the Canavian framework, I believe in embracing the mindset, but also start to visualize work and be more transparent. By visualizing the work and with feedback from the organization, we can start to prioritize from what adding most value to the organization. Of course, some of our tasks within HR need to be given priority regarding to laws and regulations. A Kanban, a whiteboard, can help us to get a common ground and also help us to pause tasks, reprioritize, and collaborate and help each other. So what we want to do is that we want to do fewer things at the same time. That's how we get a better flow and also create value in a faster pace. So skip the annual HR year and start to work transparent with a Kanban board instead. I also believe in go from HR specialist role to more T-shaped competence. So what is a T-shaped competence? We want that everyone have a broader competence with some depth specialist competence within one or several areas. Because specialist roles and HR silos risk to become person dependent, and also handovers lead to sub-optimization and slower processes. So in this way, we will not become personal dependent, and we can also help each other and focus on the tasks that create the greatest value. Also, we want to go from push to pull. We at HR often try to get attention by informing and updating policies and pushing out the information. And our employees are overwhelmed by information, not only from HR, from different angles and perspectives. And it's difficult for them to sort what is noise and what is signals. So working environment is about giving the employees the space and chance to collect the info when they need it, just in time, from push to pull. I will give you one example. Do every employee need to have the same amount of development talk at the same time and cadence? Or can they invite their manager when they need and feel that they want to have their development talk? Someone maybe want to have their development talk with their manager once a week, and someone else once a year. Of course, you can set the minimum. Okay, so let's do a sum up. What's the difference between traditional HR and Agile HR? I want to emphasize that it's not black or white. This is just a way of visualize what we are heading towards. And I do dislike polarization. So we want to go from the static HR year, which are built up on best practices and a yearly cadence, to work more continuously and ongoing, where we have the opportunity to reprioritize, to work transparently, collaborate and help each other and work in smaller iteration. We also want to go from specialist roles to work more in cross-functional team with the T-shaped competence. What is a cross-functional team? It's a team with mixed competences that together work to solve a task from start to end, instead of handing it over to one and another. We also want to move from the policy and standardization trap to support flexibility, speed, and collaboration. If we have a common platform, a mindset, and a clear what and why, tools and methods can vary depending on situation and context. Also, when we solve complex tasks, one person cannot perform oneself. We need to utilize the collective brain capacity. So when we only measure individual performance, there is a high risk of sub-optimization and competition that doesn't favor the customer or the organization. So I believe instead to look more into how the individual contribute to the team, how the individual develop and learn new competencies. And also, one size doesn't fit all. In complex contexts, there is no one size fits all solutions, because that's best practices. Also, we want to move from to control and follow up, built on inspection, to create a framework where why and where are clear to everyone, and let then the team themselves decide upon how. I also believe that we need to see leadership as something that everyone in the company is responsible for. And the manager's most important task is to support and help to clarify the framework, what and why, to align this autonomy. Also, think big but start small. Is it good enough now and safe enough to try? Try it. Progress is more important than perfection. And last but not least, have fun. When we experience that something is pleasurable and fun, we are more breached to try it again. Contrary, if we experience something unpleasant, we will avoid it.
Thank you, Frida, for returning to the show and doing this follow-up episode. It was brilliant.
Thank you, Jimmy.
I have a few follow-up questions as well. You gave an example of how to apply the probe, sense, respond strategy to work with the use of MVPs. Can you give an example of how that can look like in HR? On what product or service could you apply that to?
Yes, as I said, I believe that when we work with the HR-related development work, this is a really good strategy. And one example could be when we develop a leadership program. And traditionally, we have developed it as a big bang deliver, like this is a one-size-fits-all solution for all our leaders in the organization. So, but I believe by collecting feedback and start working smaller iteration, we can work more like these probe, sense, and respond with this like strategy, and these leadership program can evolve. And I also believe that that's the best strategy when it comes to solving this type of problems, because we also need to collect feedback and listen to the end users.
Good example. Made sense to me. You said something else during the talk that I assume might feel weird or even provocative to some people. Skip the HR year. But it's safe. It's cyclical. It's nice. What reactions do you get when you propose that?
Yeah, of course, some people get a bit like upset about it, but I'm not saying that we should skip it totally. What I'll say is that we need to find other ways of working with the things that are in the HR year, because we work very on a yearly cadence when it comes to this, but it's really hard to see what the organization need within a year. So I believe more like start to visualize it on a Kanban board, because that will help us to get a common ground and also have the same picture of things. And when we when we do have a common ground, it's more easy to help each other and also prioritize and reprioritize and pause things. And then we also can start to work with fewer things, and we get a better flow, and we can deliver value faster.
Yeah. Kanban board. I love it. Of course.
Yay!
Okay, the third and last question. So many organizations, the managers with the help of HR or vice versa, have developed tons and tons of tools and practices to measure or evaluate the individual performance and to figure out how to support individual growth and development. So what can we do, if anything? What's your thoughts about on kind of measuring a team's performance and supporting the growth of a team?
Yeah, I think you have a lot of good thoughts on this also, Jimmy. But to start with, I think we can keep on help and support the individual, but I think we should look more into how the individual help other to grow, how me as an individual perform for the team, how I can help the team to perform, how I learn new things and competencies and things like that, more than how I perform, because I can't perform myself. The team will perform. So it's more like, how do I contribute to the team? But also I believe in start to measure more like the impact of the teamwork and also the outcomes. But this is challenging. Do you have any thoughts on it, Jimmy?
No, yes, I do, but that's why I asked you. No, but I agree with what you said. Try to measure impact, and with terms of supporting the growth of the team, apply servant leadership, intent-based leadership, have Scrum Masters, Agile coaches support the teams in their efforts to become stronger together as a team. But it's a tricky one, because I don't believe it's possible to compare the productivity or effectiveness of a team and then compare it to others. I think that's a very dangerous path to go down.
Yeah, but I also believe we need to reinvent our processes, and a lot of the processes that we have are processes that HR support, like the performance management, and all these processes goes into each other. So we need to start to investigating how do these processes support with value to an organization that more and more operate in a complex context, because they were successful when we were more on the right side in the Canadian framework, more the obvious and complicated context. But now we are heading towards more complex context, and then we have to reinvent our processes and see how if they support, or if they are like a bottleneck.
Yeah. Thank you, Frida, and once again, thank you for joining the show.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
What's your experience from working within HR or with HR during an Agile transformation? Please share, comment, and discuss below. And thanks again to you, my fantastic Patreons. You are the best. As a Patreon, you get early access to new videos, invites to exclusive meetups, and you become part of our Discord community. If you haven't seen the first talk from Frida, HR for Agile, you can see it here. And as always, explore, have fun, and be safe.